Welcome to Be Brilliant with Jing Lang, the podcast dedicated to those seeking to excel in every aspect of their lives. Through conversations with her guests, Jing will tease out personal stories, helpful tips, and proven strategies to help you elevate your life and reach your highest potential. Get ready to dive in and discover what it means to be truly brilliant. And now, here's your host, Jing Lang.
Sharon Giffen's 35-year actuarial career was focused on life insurance, where she progressed from vice president to chief actuary, chief financial officer, then president and CEO of a multinational insurer. In 2016, Sharon transitioned to board service. She currently serves on the boards of directors of 4 insurance companies in diverse sectors. Hello, Sharon. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful today. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us where you're calling from, Sharon?
I am calling in from the interior of British Columbia, the beautiful Okanagan Valley.
I understand that you moved there in 2021 and you said the timing was interesting. Tell us more about that move.
Oh, it was interesting times for sure. When we moved, we packed up our house in Toronto, shipped our belongings off to BC, and then we flew out here, of course, to receive things. And in the meantime, as we arrived, a wildfire started about a mile away from where we live. So that was a little bit nerve-wracking, to say the least. And because it was so close, we decided not to unload all of our belongings here. I found a storage unit, we put our belongings there. And after living in a hotel for 3 weeks, as we waited for the fire to settle down, we actually bought an RV. And we set up the RV in the driveway, plugged into the hydro, plugged into the water, so that we had all of our services in the RV. But that's where we lived for 3 months until the wildfire settled down. Yeah, it was welcome to BC.
What a story.
That same year, there was the heat dome where a little town not far from us set an all-time Canada-wide record for high temperatures. And a month or two after we actually moved into our house, there was the first time I ever heard the term atmospheric river, which means like incredibly hard pounding rain that washed out all of the highways between where we live and the coast. So you couldn't actually drive out to Vancouver, for example. You had to drive way down into the US and around and then back up into Vancouver during COVID. So, of course, crossing the border meant having tests. Interesting times indeed. But you know what? We love our home. It's a good thing we love our home because it was a challenge getting here.
Oh my, I was just going to invite you back to Toronto should the weather situation persist. This year, there's another fire in Jasper, which is not too close. What do you think about all these, climate change, fire? What can we actually do about that?
Well, I don't know if there's a whole lot we can do about climate change per se, but how do we manage the risks and how do we manage insurance around climate change events? I think there's a lot of work that can be done in the actuarial profession as we get better and better at collecting data and using models. And as AI continues to accelerate how well we can use our models. Now, I'm going to say we still need to use judgment and we still need to review data and make sure that we're, it's not garbage in, garbage out. But I do think that that there's so much that we can do. I'm excited that the SOA has the climate change certificate now that people can start to actually dig into that topic and start to understand how it's going to impact us. It's not just about floods and fires and hazards around property. It's also health. As we have more and more smoke and water insecurity and water cleanliness, it is really a global issue of population having to actually start to migrate, to get out of certain zones. I mean, all of those things absolutely are things that we can model, we can study, and we can start to therefore contribute to solutions on how we're going to cope as a global society with climate change. It's here.
Oh, well said. Well, you are one of the endorsed candidates for the SOA President-Elect this year, and I believe voting is going to start soon on August 19th.
Yes.
So you are one of the three endorsed candidates. Can you tell us what your promise is? What sets you apart from your competitors?
Well, I think the promise is about being a great leader for the board of directors of the SOA. It's not like any one member of the board of directors, be it the president-elect or the president or anyone else, individually, single-handedly has a whole lot to change. But the president-elect can guide the conversation. They can more specifically get particular topics onto the agenda. And I think that's a really, really big positive impact on how you can impact the profession going forward. Why am I different? Well, I guess the obvious thing is I'm female and my competitors are male. Not that that should really make any difference. I've been the only woman in the room so much of my career that that almost doesn't mean anything anymore. I think the second thing is I'm Canadian, and it's not so much that I am Canadian per se, but we've had a pretty long succession of U.S. presidents of the SOA. And it does purport to be a global organization. It is a global organization. And therefore, I want to have representation from somewhere other than just the US. Not that there's, obviously lots of members in the US, so there's certainly lots of cause to be focused there. But the growth in the SOA is probably focused elsewhere. And I think having just a little bit of perspective from outside the US is helpful and valuable in figuring out how to actually serve members elsewhere. One other thing that I've spent most of my career in small or medium-sized companies, not exclusively, but mostly. And one of the things that you really get to learn when you're in a small company is how an actuary's opinions and values and the way that we contribute and think about decisions across an immense range of different kinds of concerns. And I think that's one of the things that I really could bring to the leadership of the SOA is that I don't think narrowly. I don't think like a technical actuary. I really think about the business as the business. And in fact, even more recently, think about the professional aspects of being an actuary and how that can help in society. And I think that's a really piece of what I would bring to the leadership of the SOA.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And you're not foreign to leadership roles in professional
No.
organizations, right? You served on the board of the SOA before, and you're
Yeah.
past president of the CIA. It would be amazing to have a Canadian as president-elect for the SOA.
Exactly. In addition to volunteer leadership roles, I've also had roles inside corporations. My chief actuary, chief financial officer, CEO of the division, chief risk officer. So I've had a number of different pretty senior leadership roles, including in a company where we did business in 3 different countries. So we were a Canadian organization. Our biggest business unit was the US. And we had a nice little unit over in the UK as well. So I'm accustomed to dealing with different kinds of products, different reporting regimes. All of that really comes together again in being able to be flexible and to understand different ways of thinking about the same problem.
I like that. We touched on AI earlier, Sharon. Can you tell us more about your view? Do you think AI is a friend or a foe to our profession?
Well, probably a little bit of both. Absolutely, AI is going to change what actuaries do and how we do it. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I think it introduces, new risks that we didn't have before. And we can't 100% rely on it. AI engines also fail. And it requires that individual human judgment to make sure that it is still performing the way we expect it to. Like any tool, it has to continually be monitored and and updated to make sure that it's still serving the purpose that it was meant for.
What's your view on AI being used for Society of Actuaries internally?
Mhm. Well, obviously, I think, as we're providing education, as the SOA is providing education for actuaries and how to use it, well, it certainly makes a lot of sense to try to figure out how the SOA itself can use AI to better deliver services out to its members, whether that's through the education process, particularly when one sort of leaps to the grading of exams as a place where maybe that could help get through grading faster. Because I know waiting for results is not the most fun part of writing exams. So I do think there is a role. We have tremendous amount of research going on. Is there a way AI can actually help in assessing, overseeing, or doing research? I don't know. But I think there's lots of opportunities there that need to be explored.
Let's talk about election percentage because we've seen a decrease. We've seen around 25% and then now dipping to 20%. What can you say to those not voting?
Wow, it's almost unbelievable to me that people don't take the opportunity to vote. So I guess I start from the place where, is the SOA important to me in my career? And I think wherever you are in your career, whether you're a candidate starting to write exams, whether you're, a new fellow or a seasoned, experienced actuary, the SOA's programs around qualification and then continuing education, including now the certificates that you can get for more in-depth and detailed understanding of certain topics. All of those things are really foundational to our careers. In addition, I think it's often not remembered or recognized as much that there's a tremendous amount of research also going on. And that research, part of it, of course, is to provide experience studies and things that actuaries use on a regular basis. But some of it is really trying to break through and understand more about how our profession can benefit society. So being a member of the SOA is important. It's certainly important to me. The leadership of the SOA is actually making decisions about those programs, about what certificates are we going to offer, how are we going to go about doing more research or less research. The board is making those decisions. And I think that's where I get to the point where I want to look at all of the candidates who are presenting themselves. And I want to make sure that my thinking and my approach is represented on the board. It's not that any one person has a whole lot of power over the whole board, but I want my thinking to be represented there. I think the other sort of flip side of it is, on the downside, if fewer and fewer people vote, that voting percentage shrinks, the number of people who are voting shrinks, and you're starting to get it to be a little bit of an in crowd, so that if you're not part of the in crowd, you never have an opportunity to have your voice heard at the board of the SOA. I don't think we're there yet, but I think it is a risk. Even more, I think about in Canada and the US, women got the right to vote in federal elections only in like 1918 and 1920 in the two countries. That's not much
So
more than
recent.
years ago. Man, go out and vote. Use that right that we worked so very hard, our ancestors worked so very hard to get us the right to vote.
I appreciate that. It's sometimes we take it for granted because we have it now. We think we always did, but yeah, many people before us fought long and hard to have that voice, so we could
Yeah.
exercise that voice.
Yes.
I want to go back to the new fellow for a second. Some of the newer fellows or actual students have explicitly said that they don't plan to get involved with the SOA as soon as they're finished with their exams. What can we do? Is there anything you can say, Sharon, that you feel can change their mind?
Well, we all work really hard to get through those exams, and to get a designation. We're FSAs. Is that enough? For me, that was not enough. I wanted to go further, do more. And for me at that time, of course, it was volunteering on the exams, because that was the easy thing. It was, I just finished them. I know how to do this. And, but it's not just about doing the work and supporting the SOA, it also benefited me enormously, created networks of contacts that I would never have met in any other circumstances. So volunteerism for me was, as much as it was about doing the work and contributing, which I think is valuable, I value that. But it's also about, it was also about giving back to me because I felt I learned from it. I got perspectives that I didn't otherwise have. I networked with people, not just sort of my coworkers, but also the leaders of the groups. So you learn a lot about why should you get involved in the SOA and what is the benefit of doing that. And I won't take anything away from the CIA as well. I mean, certainly that's a highly valuable alternative if that makes more sense. But it's not just about giving back. It's also about getting something for yourself.
Well said. And I can definitely speak for getting things for myself. Because one thing I felt towards the end of my exam writing journey, and that's 10 years ago, I was like, I would never volunteer on the exam writing committee because I'm so done with exams. But there were other things I discovered that I could get involved in. I got involved in writing a glossary. For the SOA, I got involved in the reinsurance section. I always wanted to be a writer. I always wrote, but I wanted to publish. So I got involved with the reinsurance newsletter. Like, there are many things that I feel, like you said, volunteer is a great way to get our toe into something wet, and we can decide how much wetter we want to get. It's a very low stake way to do other things that you want to accomplish with your life, just to try it out, because you never know how much you like or don't like something. It's different when it's conceptual and when you're actually doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you volunteer to be a member of a committee, you have some work to do. And yes, you should do that because that's your commitment to becoming a member of the committee. But if you don't like it, you can stop and you can try something else. And I think the thing that you've talked about that I really admire is you said you wanted to write. Well, that's not really an actuarial skill. And yes, of course, we have to write notes and reports and such, but writing is a different skill. And you can use your actuarial background and use the opportunities to get some experience and decide if you really do like it. Some of the things that I thought I might like to do, I found out I didn't really like to do them very much.
Absolutely. And you don't know until you try. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to go talk about your board service. So you have a designation that is quite unusual for most actuaries. It's called ICD.D. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so ICD is the Institute of Corporate Directors, and the .D is the director's designation. So it entailed going through a course of study with the Rotman School of Business at the University of Toronto. And we learned how to be good corporate board members. It was very focused in the corporate world. A little bit of focus on the public company side. So public company reporting and all of the things that go with being a public company. It was very intensive, 4 3-day weekends that we actually attended class over the course of most of a year, maybe 8 or 9 months. Before each course, there was an enormous amount of reading. I felt like I was writing an actuarial exam again. But the courses were facilitated by very seasoned, experienced directors who are also great educators. And your classmates, they're all very experienced business people who are interested in going on to be directors of corporations. So it was both the faculty and my fellow students that I just thought this was probably one of the most valuable education experiences I've had as an adult. I mean, it was just intensive, not easy, difficult to be sure. And it was difficult in that it was exercising a different part of your brain and learning different kinds of skills and behaviors, because how you act as a board member and how you act as a manager or an executive, that's different. And learning and getting really accustomed to that difference was a pretty fascinating exercise. I really, really enjoyed it. The final exam is a mock board meeting where there's a difficult issue at hand. So you have to navigate how to participate in that board meeting, as well as a written exam. And I do have to do continuing education associated with it. So not only am I doing my continuing education for my actuarial designation, I'm also doing it for my director's designation. It makes for an intense amount of learning. That's okay with me.
Yeah, it seems like learning fuels you, which is amazing. I understand you're a board member for opera company. Did I get that right?
Yes, I was on the board of Opera Atelier for quite a few years. At first, pretty close to the beginning of my tenure, I was on the audit committee and then became chair of the audit committee. And I was served in that role for a long time. When I knew I was going to move out west, because Opera Atelier is a small little company, it's based in Toronto. Now, they do perform in France, which I have yet to have the opportunity to see one of their performances in France, but I would love to do that. But I thought, it's not going to be very efficient to be out west and serving on the board. So I was sort of orchestrating to get somebody else ready to be the chair of the audit committee, and that happened, and that was good. And I was just kind of stepping down, and then COVID came along. Now, COVID and arts organizations, that was a tough, tough time because nobody really knew how was this going to turn out in the end. And so not only did they ask me to come back to the board after I had just left, they asked me to come back and chair the board. So
Oh, wow.
I care about the company and I so like their product and what they do. I said, okay, but you do understand I'm going to be in BC. But of course, all the meetings were virtual anyway. It didn't really matter at all that I wasn't there in person because there was nothing going on in person. So it was a pretty interesting time, but we got them through. They were able to do a few things on film that you couldn't perform live, but you could perform on film. So we shifted a little bit, kept our artists employed, which was really important to us, kept our staff employed, which, there's only a few people and they don't make a whole lot of money, but got to have some money to pay them. And if you're not making a performance, nobody is buying tickets. It was a pretty interesting time, but it's sort of one of those things that it's just a life experience. And is the fact that I'm an actuary helpful? I think it helped me in that, logical, fact-based, try to separate some of the emotion because artists can be very emotional. and it was acknowledging that fear they had for their future and yet trying to frame it in a way that it's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. And so, yes, I think being an actuary helped, but it wasn't necessarily the key thing. I think the key thing was that I just loved the.
That's amazing. And I do wish you have get to see one of their performance in France. That would be amazing. So you are still active on other boards. You have 4 other boards, diverse businesses that you're part of. What do you love the most about the diversity of these companies?
Yeah, the real treasure for me is that I was a life actuary. I did very little other, maybe little touches here and there of other disciplines. But once I went into board service, I actually in the beginning focused on not doing life insurance because I wanted to exercise my brain and figure out, can I master other lines of business from a board perspective? Now I am not a technical actuary in the mortgage insurance business or the pension risk transfer business. But as an actuary, I know the questions to ask. I know how to delve into it at an appropriate board level so that I don't get dragged into details because I don't know their technical side. So I think that's the thing that I really liked. There's a theme here. I like to learn.
Yeah.
And going into the mortgage insurance and health benefits and pension risk transfer, and I spent some time with property and casualty as well. All of them really made me expand how I think about business and how applying my actuarial skills to this new, different business. Recently, I have joined a life insurance organization. It's tiny and it's a not-for-profit. It's a fraternal benefit society. And that's sort of a little bit of also give back as well as being able to really contribute because I know the life insurance business.
Yes. Oh, wow. I didn't even know there are life insurance companies that are not profit making, but it makes sense for fraternal societies.
Yes.
Wow. So if someone wants to get into the board service, how would they go about that even?
Well, I think most people start off on something that's not for profit and in an area of significant interest or passion. For me, that was the opera company. So there's lots of places that you can get involved on in a not for profit, and of course, it's not paid. But it
Right.
gives it gives you the opportunity, though, to learn about being a board member.
Mhm.
Uh, there's a balance of how much work you actually do. On a not for profit board, there's more personal work. Very typically, it's fundraising. So that has to be
Mm,
something you can kind of get your head wrapped around.
right.
But it's also a way to start to learn how to um, listen to the management team and learn about their business. For me, for example, when I started on the opera company, I really had no understanding of how, like, what's the financial foundation of an opera company? How do they make money? How do they lose money? And of course, donations are a huge part of what you do, but also grants. You apply for grants from all sorts of different people, governments and individual grants. So by joining a passion project, it gives you a way of sort of stepping into it slowly so you can decide, is this something that you really want to pursue? The ICD program that I took, it is not inexpensive, and it is really geared to very senior people who have already had some board experience. So it's not intended to sort of bring you up to being a board member. It is to take a board member and make them better at being a board member. So that's kind of a further down the road if you find that you really like it and want to pursue it. ICD is not the only one. There are others around. And so there's more than one opportunity to get involved. There's also some one-off courses that you can take, again, that just give you a sense for whether or not you would be interested truly in doing that work.
So I'm hearing get involved with a not-for-profit first in an area that you feel passionate about. Maybe pursue some education, ICD.D or something equivalent, and then move towards corporate board if you think you really love it.
Yep.
I hope you get paid by the time you move to corporate
Yes.
board, right?
Yes. You.
Yeah, I love volunteering, but there is a point where I have to pay my bills.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, on corporate boards, it is a paid position, and it's certainly one of those things that I find it's a fantastic, as I call it, my glide path to retirement. That I stopped full time work, but I didn't want to stop working. And this is a beautiful way. It's intensive when there's board meetings coming up. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of reading, thinking about issues. But then you're done. The meeting's over, and you have some free time before the next one. So it's kind of that glide path, if you will, to full retirement someday. And I'm not sure when that'll be.
Well, I want to circle back to the SOA one. So this one, SOA is not for profit, but then the position is also volunteer work, right?
It is.
So why now, like you said, you have retired from full-time employment, you have 4 other boards that you're helping. Why?
Well, the actuarial profession has been so good to me. I have achieved a level of success in my life that maybe I would have had this success some other way, but I got there by being an actuary. So I do feel some need to give back to sort of make sure that the next generations continue to have this wonderful profession to work in, and that it's growing and thriving and ever expanding, because I think there's topics that we don't touch yet that we could do much more about. Think about supply chain and demographic migration, and I mean there's lots of society issues that I think actuaries could get involved in. So I want to continue to bolster the profession to do those kinds of things. Also, I'm at a point in time in my life now where I've achieved what I need to achieve for me. What I want to do now is leave a legacy. I want to come into an organization and leave it better than when I arrived. I like to learn, but I like to share my learning as well. and try to improve the organization, improve the SOA, improve the experience for the members of the profession, and to improve the profession overall. So it's all of those things together. As a sort of semi-retired person, I've got the energy, I've got the time, and I certainly have the will.
Sharon, so not to put you on the spot, but a little bit. If someone, a fellow actuary, is interested in getting the ICD.D or equivalent board of director program, would you be willing to make yourself available for a conversation?
You bet. Of course I would. And I've already done this many times. So yes, for sure. If anybody is interested in a director's career, whether it's about the ICD.D or anything else, I'm completely open to having a conversation about that.
And they can reach out to you via LinkedIn. Is that the best way?
Through LinkedIn. My email address is in the actuarial directory. So lots of ways to reach me, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love it. But is there anything else, Sharon, that you would love to share with our audience?
I was going to close with the please vote, because I really do think it's important to vote. But the other thing we never really talked about is just being kind. I really value that people can just be nice to each other. And I think that's an incredibly valuable value to have, is that kindness really does matter.
Thank you for that advice. I appreciate it. Sharon, why is your door closed?
The door of my office has to be closed when I'm on camera because I have 2 cats. And one of them in particular thinks anytime that I am talking to my little screen here in front of me, that means that she needs to come and wave her big fluffy tail across in front of the camera, in front of my face. Her name is Miss Dennis. It's a girl, but she's Dennis because she always has been a bit of a Dennis the Menace. And she is absolutely the epitome of why proof positive that the earth could not be flat, because the cats would have knocked everything off the edge if the earth was flat.
That's hilarious.
My other girl is Precious, and she just is. She is just the sweetest little girl, and yeah, she's just so nice. Not like Dennis, but I love them.
How long have you had them?
They're 13 years old, and I've had them, okay, maybe I got them when they were about 3 months old. So pretty much their whole lives.
Oh, where did you adopt them from?
My sister-in-law's farm. So they were barn cats, and I went out to the barn. I wanted more cats. I lost my prior crew and wanted more cats. Went out to the barn and picked up a couple. They always had lots of cats at their barn because trying to keep the mice down. But there was always kittens to adopt, which was always fantastic.
My God, I love that. I'm a cat person. Have fostered, my husband and I will have fostered 38, soon to be 39 cats over the past 4 years. And I love the fact that you got 2 of them because it's always better together. One of the shelters I worked with, they have a rule to say any kitten that's less than 6 months of age, you have to adopt 2. And it's so smart.
Yeah.
Because they help each other socially, mentally, physically. They keep each other occupied. It's so great. And they've been together for 13 years. Do they groom each other?
A little bit. My prior crew had 4 in my last crew, and they did like crazy. These 2, they do, but not maybe as much as some others. These 2 are a little bit more competitive with each other than my last crew, which was just, they were always sleeping in a heap together. These 2 will, but they will also have their independent time when they want attention and they want this and they want that, but they'll do it individually as much as they do it together. So all the cats are different, all different personalities.
Absolutely. And oh my God, I just realized you made all that move with the 2 cats, living in RV, living in a hotel, coming back to the house. Oh my gosh.
It was a crazy time. And they were, I think the whole move, of course, was very disruptive. And then after they moved, they got stuffed into this RV, and it's like from a whole house into this little tiny space. It's like, you know, they were fine. They were just fine. Sat in the front window and watched the birds, and they were good.
This is something I admire about cats or animals in general. They don't have the sense of dread. They're very much present because that's their only mode. Like whatever they're in an RV, they're in a hotel room, they just deal with it. This is the life right now. We're gonna make lemonade out of lemons, as opposed to for human, we would worry about the future, dwell on the past. But for them, it's just take it.
Yeah.
There's so much we can learn about animals. Well, thank you so much again for joining us from Ontario, BC, and all the best with the election. I root for you, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Be Brilliant with Jing Lang. We hope you found valuable insights and motivation to fuel your journey. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And share this with 3 people in your life endeavoring to achieve personal greatness. Remember, brilliance is within you, and every step you take brings you closer to your best self. Keep striving, keep shining, and until next time, stay brilliant.